July meeting of the Village of Ossining Historic Preservation Commission. We have a long agenda tonight. The first item on the agenda is the hearing for the Ellis Place landmarking, which is what I assume many of you are here for. However, we have a little bit of a problem. We're down to a 6-member board, and one member is a homeowner on Ellis Place, so she is recused from the hearing, which means we do not yet have a quorum until one of the two late members arrive. So we're going to have to hold the hearing on Ellis Place until we have an Ellis Place quorum, but we do have an HPC quorum, so we can call the meeting to order and do things like considering the minutes of the last meeting. So would the members of the commission look at the minutes of the last meeting, which should be in your packets? It's the May 14th meeting. Take a minute to look over the minutes, and I will ask for any corrections or emendations.
I don't have them in my packet, but I reviewed them when they were sent out online.
Okay.
I don't have them either. I'm sure they're fine.
I have you.
I haven't. We can.
The minutes, not the agenda, the minutes.
Not use the.
That's the agenda. This is the minutes. Well, let us quickly pass them down while we're ready. You did get them all online? The main item of business was the landmarking, the issuing of a certificate of appropriateness to 199 Main Street for a new sign for the Peruvian restaurant there. And for those of you who are here for the hearing, I can advise you that we have copies of the brochure that we prepared and had at the informational meeting before. This one is not stamped draft. And here we go. We do have a quorum now. Great. Also, those of you who are going to want to speak at the hearing, there should be a sign-in sheet, and you will be called in the order in which you sign in for the hearing, and you will each be given 4 minutes. Our corporate counsel should have the sign. Signing in to speak on the hearing for the landmarking of Ellis Place. Okay, while we're getting set up, for the commission members, do I hear any corrections or emendations on the minutes from the June 4th meeting? Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes as issued? Okay, Corey Gunther moves. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Dana White seconds. All in favor of accepting the minutes as presented?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now we will move on to the first official item of business, the hearing on the landmarking designation of Ellis Place as a historical and architectural design district. I'm going to begin with the PowerPoint, which is an abbreviated version of the one we had at our earlier informational meeting. This is an official public hearing. The meeting many of you, I recognize, were at earlier this year was a give and take informal informational. This is much more formal because we're doing legal business here. It is being recorded by GoTV. We have a court stenographer recording it, so you will be on the record in your remarks. And as I said, you will each have 4 minutes. Let's go through this. Can we get that in presentation mode? Click on there. Yeah. Thank you. And you also have a monitor over there. Okay. Again, to introduce the Historic Preservation Commission, it is an official branch of the government of the village of Ossining. 7 members appointed by the village manager, spread out among different areas of interest and expertise, including historians, architects, real estate people, financial services people, and residents in the existing historic districts and landmark buildings. We are charged by the village and by the citizens of the village with the general task of preserving the historic aspects of the village. And we have 3 main duties, main activities within this. Recommend the landmarking of specific districts, and that's what we're doing tonight. Discussing whether we want to recommend the landmarking of Alice Place. We also landmark individual buildings. The other thing, and we will be having 2 of these later on in the agenda, are applicants who want a certificate of appropriateness to make changes on landmark properties. And then in general, we have the duty of public education about the history of the village, and that's most visible in the museum and the street signs you've seen around town, but we do other educational activities. Can we have the next? Okay, now why designate a landmark? It is exactly what we're charged with, historic preservation, to make sure that the historic aspects of the village are preserved for current residents and for future generations, so the village does not lose its physical history. Okay, I think this is all pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so we are talking about designating Alice Place, and you have a map on what constitutes Alice Place for this designation on the last page of the brochure. It's pretty much Alice Place. And it's to be designated as a historical and architectural design district. And these 2 terms are important. Historical, because in the presentation here, Alice Place is considered a historical entity within the village based on how it was developed and who has lived there over the years, independent of the architecture. But also, it has contributing architecture in that it is probably the most important and impressive assemblage of one kind of building in Ossining, and one of the most important in Westchester, that is, buildings of the second half of the 19th century for the upper middle class. Not mansions, not working people's houses, not farms, but a specific group of people whose history is preserved in the buildings they built and lived in. In Ossining, so far, we have 2 existing historic and architectural design districts. The Sparta district at the south end of Ossining, where I live and where Commission member Joanne Tall also lives. And we have the downtown historic district, mainly the Crescent, that is Main Street, the north side of Main Street, which has been preserved, which was much more recently landmarked. Next. Okay, again, why Alice Place? It is a planned community, a piece of land that was purchased for a residential neighborhood and was subdivided and planned out to be a unity, and has, in the words of the document, remained a historic unit. It has very fine examples of Victorian era architecture. Victorian architecture in general is not a style, it is a period, and here we have some of the styles that are represented on Ellis Place that constitute the architecture of the Victorian period, and also it was home to many prominent Ossining families leading in the local businesses. Of course, the most famous being the Branford family that ran the pill factory down on the waterfront. And the Barlow building, the Barlow block at the Five Points corner. Next. Okay, now, if the process goes forward, and we'll discuss the steps in that it still needs to go forward, there will be the necessity of homeowners receiving certificates of appropriateness from this board for certain things. Let me point out first, and I've underlined it, these are all for changes. No one will be asked to change anything in their home. It's only if people are about to undertake changes that that change has to be approved as adding to, or at least maintaining, the historical character of the buildings in question. So we're not ever going to go to a person and say, you have to make this change in your house. The house as it is stays as it is. It includes buildings, structures, outbuildings, walls, fences, steps. We'll get to what it doesn't include later. It's exterior only. Any internal modifications of a building are not our province. We only consider the building as it appears to someone basically walking up Ellis Place. Next. Okay, not required. Interior with no effect on the exterior. Ordinary maintenance and repair which do not involve a change in design, material, or outward appearance, and paint colors. We do not care what color you paint your house. Basically, we are concerned that changes not be made that are permanent or irreversible, like taking out your beautiful shuttered doors and replacing it with a picture window, or tearing down a historic house and replacing it with something else. We're only talking about changes, and we're only talking about pretty much irreversible changes that will take an existing historic building away from its historic character. Next. Okay, now not all buildings in a historic district are considered contributing. And you have on the next to last page here, which are contributing and non-contributing. And this commission walked the block in great detail and has considered documents, photographs, etc., to decide which buildings we consider contribute to the historic character, and they're mainly the older buildings, and which buildings do not contribute, and those are infill buildings, like there was a big fire there a few years ago and a new building was built. That's not contributing. And there are a couple other buildings on the block that are fairly recent and not considered contributing. There are some buildings that are old but have been altered so much that it is, if not totally irreversible, probably never going to go back to its historic character, and those we are terming non-contributing. Now, all of the buildings, whether they're contributing or non-contributing, will need a certificate of appropriateness for change, but the criteria are different. If we have a 1960s building on that block, we're not going to treat it with the same criteria as if we have an 1870s intact Victorian building on that block. Similarly, new construction will have to get a certificate of appropriateness that the new building will be appropriate, that it will fit in, that it will be harmonious with the nature of the existing buildings. Okay, next. Okay, generally, these are the basis of our consideration for contributing and non-contributing buildings. Basically, the word is compatible. The changes to either of them must be compatible with the historic nature of the district, as in the case of new construction. Next. Okay, so here's where we are. We had our information session on March 26th over at Village Hall. Many of you were there. That was the informal give and take. Tonight, as I said, is a formal legal hearing. At our meeting on May 14th, we submitted an application to the Board of Trustees of the village, who have the final say, as we will see. And this is what we submitted, basically, with a cover sheet. That is, this is the grounds on which we and then they are to consider whether Ellis Place be designated a historic architectural design district. Tonight is the public hearing. In addition to the 4 minutes each person can speak, you can submit in written form documents, opinions, anything you like, either tonight or for the next 10 days. We are holding the submission process open for the next 10 days. Just submit it to the Village of Ossining. Anything else you want to be entered into the record and considered when we and the Board of Trustees make our decisions. At our next meeting, August 6th, we will vote whether we wish to be on the record as favoring the designation of Ellis Place as a historic and architectural design district. Then it goes to the Board of Trustees, who will hold another public hearing like tonight, where people will be able to express to them their opinions on the subject. This is the way the law is written. And then finally, the Board of Trustees will vote on the application, and they have the final say. Okay. All right. Questions or submission of further materials, that's where to send it to, which is here. Take it to the planning department upstairs. Okay, so now it is our turn to listen to you. And for the most part, we are not going to respond to questions or give our opinions. We're here tonight to listen to you. First, let's just all introduce ourselves. I'm Alan Stahl, I'm Chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. And we're on GoTV, so everyone make sure you're speaking into a microphone and that the stenographer gets your name, you, the audience, as well as the members.
Good evening, I'm Joe Ferranda, and I'm a member.
Adam Markovics, member of the HPC.
Godi Van Beer, I'm a member of the HPC.
Dana White, I'm a member, and I'm recusing myself from the proceedings because I live on Ellis Place.
Joanne Tall, HBC member.
Okay, and as I said, I will call on you in the order in which you've signed in. If anyone does wish to speak and has not yet signed in, we'll put the sheet out, and you each have 4 minutes, and Corporate Counsel Stuart Kahan will be timing you. So please, when I call your name, get up to the microphone, and remember you're on television and court stenographer, so make sure your name is expressed clearly. First speaker is Amanda Marsh.
As Alan said, my name's Amanda Marsh. I live at 50 Ellis Place. While I think this is good in theory, I am in opposition of the proposed historical district. One thing I've learned while living in the village for the past 6 years is to never tell a contractor upfront that you live in the village. Many will not return your call. I fear that adding this extra layer of regulations to our homeownership is detrimental and will work against what you're trying to achieve and make it more difficult and expensive to keep our properties in good upkeep. The HPC even says in architectural guidelines that upgrades may require labor that is skilled in the historical details and more expensive materials to meet appropriateness. This is not what I expected when I purchased my home 6 years ago, and I would have thought twice about buying on Ellis Place had this been in motion. I feel this is an unfair financial burden to the homeowner, considering we already pay a lot of taxes to live in the village. My biggest fear, though, is time. As we all know, time is money. I've pulled 2 building permits since buying my house. Both times projects have been unnecessarily delayed due to administrative issues outside of our control. The first project left us without heat for 4 months during the polar vortex of 2014. Both my husband and I have missed multiple days of work to deal with these issues and contractors. One concern is that the volunteer HPC only meets once a month, and decisions about any exterior projects are only made during that time. If a proposed change to the house gets denied 1 month, we have to wait an additional month for approval. A month is a long time without an answer. Contractors often have other jobs to take on. Projects can be pushed into colder weather or even another season. When you work from home and have a baby like I do, I don't have that flexibility. Contractors also have their own schedule. I also feel there's a lot of room for ambiguity in the architectural guidelines, and I'm concerned as people move in and out of the HPC. I just want to make sure they have the same background when it comes to understanding these guidelines and Ossining history to make sure everything is applied fairly and consistently through the years. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, Bonnie Coe.
Good evening. I wasn't planning on speaking, but it's BONNIE-COE for the stenographer. As I said at the last meeting, I believe that most people who have purchased a house on Ellis Place have restored their houses according to what the original architecture was. You just have to look at some of the homes and actually have lived on the street for 20 years to see the improvements. I think having the designation in another committee adds another layer of permissions that we have to go through, and it is difficult enough with just one. And actually, when I had issues, the building department came by and said, no, you have to keep the house similar to what it was originally. They were very clear, about replacing windows, and everything had to match. I had to redo my deck, and that had to match what was there before. I actually restored my house to what it looked like in 1865. What else do I want to say? Just I think the added layer is too much for homeowners to bear. And I was questioned about a new door, a front door I had to put in. The original door leaked like crazy. You could not keep the house warm in the winter with the airflow, and there was no way to put weather stripping or anything else because of its condition. And but the original doors are there. If somebody wants that, fine, put them in. But and the other issue I had is if you want Ellis Place to be a show place, I think, which is the intent, and make the village quite desirable, let's get the trees, put not the original trees or not that species, but beautiful, some nice looking trees that aren't going to grow into the utility wires, get the sidewalks repaired, and I don't think it's feasible to do the slate that they used from the 1870s up through the 1960s or so, but there has to be a give and take here somehow if we're expected to spend the extra money for keeping our property the way, you know, in the historical condition that allows somebody to live comfortably.
Thank you. Next, Annalita Gonzalez.
Good evening. I wasn't prepared to speak tonight. My name is Annalita Gonzalez, A-N-A-L-I-D-A. I live at 42 Ellis Place, and I've been in the neighborhood for 21 years, and I love my garden. Well, as I said, I was not prepared to speak tonight, and I was not in the previous meeting. One of my concerns I have, as my two other neighbors expressed clearly, is how adding another layer of, I would not say bureaucracy or anything like that, but requirements to homeowners is going to add more to our already all the obligations we have. One of the concerns I have is how every single requirement is going to add to our expenses. Like, just making any changes or filing a permit with the building department, we have to pay, fees for everything. I just went, I built or rebuilt my deck, and it took me like more than 1.5 years to complete the whole process, between dealing with the architect and the building department, or the building department was not available, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one of my concerns, and so I think that I will have to do more research, but as I said before, I agree with all the the points my neighbors made. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Brian Martinez.
I'm good right now.
Okay. Roberta Patty Wolf.
Okay. For the record,
I'm sorry, Robert
Robert.
Patty. That's an ampersand.
My
Sorry.
wife, I'm the Robert, she's the Patty.
Okay.
Well, thank you all for this opportunity to speak. I am not going to be indecisive. I think it's, many of Bonnie and Amanda have already brought up points that would probably be a little redundant. But we have a heck of a good building department. And I will tell you, putting an extra layer on top of the building department would be additional tax. They're very good at what they do. I've seen them in court, and they do a pretty good job of maintaining the premises. Also, as Bonnie mentioned, people are already investing money. I know how to change the electrical, burners, you name it, to get their house the way it needed to be. And we're still working on it and preparing gardens within the backyard and all. We don't need any more help, thank you very much. There would be a delay in improvement if we had another layer of bureaucracy, and I will say it's a layer of bureaucracy, and it's an additional tax. We are probably one of the hardest tax counties, or one of the hardest tax counties in this country. We don't need an extra burden and extra fees and extra delays to make improvements to the houses that we all appreciate that we're doing on our own. I think it's a violation of our property rights. And again, I think we take care of the property. Now, I may be a little militant, maybe that's because of my background. I will take legal action if this ever gets approved. I will also see fit to see if we can change the Board of Trustees, if they even approve it. And I'm not just talking with a lot of steam. We had, and I'm a historian also, when they changed their mascot, it took me 3 years, but we changed the whole Board of Education, which are the same people for 10 to 15 years. So, there is no way I would like to see this become a landmark. Thank you very much.
Okay. Patty Wolf, did you want to speak?
I think you speak for me.
Okay. Thank you. Victor Dievendorf. do.
I'm Victor Vividu, V-I-V-A-U-D-O-U, 27 Alice Place. And I think, you know, my neighbors who've spoken previously have done a great job of expressing a lot of our concerns. We've spoken offline a lot. One of my major concerns is the long-term consistency of interpretation of the guidelines by the board. I mean, you're not going to be here forever. What happens in 15, 20 years? Will the interpretation be changed? Will there be a different focus? That's something that concerns me. Little changes to things like, say, molding profiles. Like I have to replace the moldings on the crown molding in my house. Well, the other one didn't work out well, so I'm going to change it. It's a very minor change, and yes, it would be noticeable, but mostly by me. Other things like types of screen doors, types of windows. Yeah, I put in a actually historically accurate screen door, and what if I just chose to go with aluminum? You know, would that be something that I needed a certificate of appropriateness for an aluminum screen door? What about things like canvas awnings on my front porch? Would that require a certificate? It can come down every year. I don't know, you know. Things like that I have concerns about. Landscaping of the frontage of the property. Will there be any guidelines or a certificate required for any landscaping changes? What if you decided to put in like Belgian block? Do I need more brick or whatever the heck it is? A herringbone walkway to my door. Do I need a certificate for that? What about the other structures like garages, sheds, things like in the back that can be seen down the driveway? You know, where's the guide? We're not seeing the guidance that you guys will be using for the appropriateness. That's one of my concerns. So with regard to whether we're in for or against, my wife is against. She asked me to state that. I'm still not 100% for or against. I need more information, but these are my concerns.
Okay, just a technical answer. Hardscape, yes. That is construction of stone fences, yes. Landscaping, no.
What about like sidewalk types, you know, brick versus
I think that would come in under hardscaping, yes.
Okay. What if I wanted to change my driveway to like, say, permeable surfaces, so I wouldn't have runoff into the street or something?
Well, I don't want to get into that.
Okay, no, but
you know, as I explained at the last meeting, our main goal is to make living in a historic house good, not bad. And we have allowed solar panels, we have moved with the times when the time demands, and when it helps people live in a historic home. My own home, this board allowed me to change from slate when I couldn't afford to replace slate to a synthetic. And we've allowed things like that because our goal really is to make people want to live in a historic district, not be unhappy about living in a historic district.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Anna Vasa.
I have nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you. Gretchen Pelleton.
Hi, Gretchen Pelleton, live at 19 Ellis Place. I will say it's been interesting to listen to all of my neighbors' comments. I think they've made a lot of valid points. I did come to this meeting and still am opposed to the historic designation. I found it interesting. Thank you for presenting us with this information.
Wilmer Cruz.
I'm Wilmer Cruz.
Yeah.
I will take next time, please.
Okay. Robert Stava.
Hello, my name's Robert Stava. I live at 2 Linden Avenue. I just wanted to go on record as saying I'm vigorously opposed to this motion. I do support historic preservation. I've worked on several major landmark projects in New York City, so I'm aware of the significance, and I appreciate the work that the board has done on this. They did, however, get the style of my house wrong. I live at, it's actually a late Queen Anne Victorian, it's not a folk Victorian. If you consult your field guide to American houses, you'll see it on page 274, I believe. Yeah, I echo the same sentiments that Amanda made, and Bonnie, and Robert.
Not Roberta.
Not Roberta. And for the same reasons, I think an extra layer of bureaucracy is not needed. The type of people that are attracted to this neighborhood have done a really good job in fixing up their houses and maintaining them. There are, of course, a few exceptions, but I also have an issue that I'd be held to a different standard than many of the houses I see down Linden Avenue, which have all kinds of illegal zoning violations going on and are never addressed, and yet if I were to do anything to my house, I'm being held to a different standard. So, and I would also again reiterate the fact that my house is on Linden Avenue, we're not on Ellis, and should be excluded. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tomiko Magario.
Oh, this time,
Huh?
he spoke for me, thank
Okay.
you.
Miguel Hernandez.
Thank you, members of the board. My name is Miguel Hernandez. I live at 10 North Water Street, and I've lived there for the past 40 years, roughly. I'm an independent historian, and just for the record, I do have advanced degrees in both history and in historic preservation. And I've traveled throughout this country looking at historic houses and historic districts. Not only here in Ossining and Westchester County, but many other states. And my experience has been that generally, although I take some of the points that people have made here to heart, generally the experience of people living in historic neighborhoods has been very, very good. The main benefit, of course, is that it does increase the value of homes. And it's been shown city after city, community after community. So if you really care about your neighborhood and you want to keep it the way it is now and you want to stay assured that it is improved, it has to be in part of the law of that particular neighborhood. I know that if you were to meet with the people right here in Sparta, for example, you'll find that most of them are very well satisfied with the appearance of their home and with the law that protects their home. So I think the experience across the country has been good. And I know that we can all come up with individual concerns and individual issues and problems, and those are all legitimate. But having also sat on this board, I have seen people come here with problems, and this board, regardless of who sits on here, is a problem-solving board that wants to work with you to assure that any issues or concerns you have are resolved as quickly as possible. Yes, there is an additional layer. There's no question about that. But generally speaking, it is to your benefit. So I would urge the board to keep that in mind about what the local and national experiences and how good it is for people and their home values. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Fogel.
Hello. Thank you for your effort and taking the time here. I guess I'd like to first start off by saying, yeah, I'm a real estate professional and investor. I own 48 Ellis Place. And I'd like to, I guess, respectfully disagree that it increases the value of the home. Because as an investor, I never would have bought on Ellis Place if I knew there was going to be this additional level of bureaucracy and expense. And in fact, I'm considering selling it if this goes through, if not, potentially to initiate legal action. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, that there's going to be an additional level of bureaucracy and expense. I think every time you want a certificate of appropriateness, you're going to have to sit through one of these meetings, take 2 hours out of your day, and maybe or maybe not you'll get a quorum, maybe someone won't show up, and they'll say, another month, come back in a month, we didn't get a quorum. Then you come back in a month, oh, did you bring the architectural drawing? Oh, come back in a month. And this is just involving potentially, replacing your windows or your doors, something along those lines. I also think it's an appropriation of our property rights, as much as I think you're good people and well-intentioned, I don't want to have to answer to Big Brother to do things to my house. I think the citizens are more capable of doing what they want to do than having you guys or having your replacements decide who or who not, and having politics getting involved and things of that nature. I also think it's horrible for the environment. Terrible for the environment. I mean, you mentioned, okay, in this one instance, after 6 months and twice the expense, we let someone put up solar panels, but I guarantee you no one could put up solar panels given the level of bureaucracy in a way that would be economic and environmentally beneficial. And also, many of the new modern materials, fiberglass windows, things that insulate your housing from cold, many of these materials, are not historic materials, and you would have a big problem. Maybe in the end, after 6 months and multiple studies and an extra 3 times the expense, you let it go through, it wouldn't be economical, and that would cause a much larger carbon footprint than we currently have. Also, I think, this would hurt most of all the poor people, the people that don't have as much money. If you have enough money, you could, money could buy you love, But for the people that don't, they won't do the changes to their houses, or they'll have to be forced to do it illegally. So I actually think, in some ways, this is going to be counterproductive. Your intent is to make a more beautiful neighborhood, but if half the houses now can't afford to do renovations or want to go through, we might have a debilitated neighborhood. And let me tell you, there's a lot of houses on Ellis that need a significant amount of renovation, exterior renovation. They have asbestos tiles. And also, the houses on Ellis, many of them I don't think are really suitable for a historic destination because they're made of old, not the highest quality, but older wood. And guess what? Wood rots, and wood has a definitive lifespan. It's not the Taj Mahal. These aren't brick structures. Most of the places that are designated historically, there's these large mansions. If they're wood, people could afford whatever it costs to do it, but not on Ellis. And a lot of these places are, need a lot of return. And my heart goes out to those people that can't afford it and don't have the time. They're working 2 jobs. They don't have the time to come in here 3 times for 6 hours and have an architect and 3 other people coming in here. So I guess my counter proposal would be this. Please don't take our property rights away. Please don't hurt the poor. Please don't hurt the environment. If someone or anyone here wants their place designated as a historic, let them do it. But don't force that upon the rest of us. Thank you very much.
And the last one on the list is Pedro Shinin.
Next time.
Okay. Is there someone who would like to speak who is not on the list?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm Faye Chazen Seidelman. I live at 65 Ellis Place. I actually got lost, the letter that you sent out. I've never been to this place before. And I was driving up and down 9A like 4 or 5 times to find it. So just FYI, it would have been nice if there was some directions in the letter. So I just saw this for the first time, obviously, and it says that my house is non-contributing because the original form is unclear. So what would the implications of that be if Ellis Place is declared a historic district?
As I noted, and maybe you didn't get here in time, non-contributing still need a certificate of appropriateness, that any changes that are made move in the direction of being more harmonious to the neighborhood rather than less harmonious. But they're held to a less rigorous standard than contributing.
And is that both exterior and interior changes?
We have no say on anything interior.
How about
Only
windows?
exterior.
Windows, I mean, this...
The exterior look of the windows, yes, is an
The look
important
of the
part
windows.
of the historic look of the house, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else who did not sign in? Okay.
Good evening, Henry Cohen, 30 Ellis Place. I also would like to thank you for your work and what you're doing. I appreciate the intent here. I just think the application is misappropriated. Just as a question, so I have a better understanding, how much of the owners of the Ellis Place properties' feelings do you take into consideration in your deliberations as you propose them to the board?
We certainly will in our deliberations on August 6th.
Can you give me a rough percentage? Do you,
No,
do you attribute?
I can't.
Okay. All right.
That will emerge in our discussions.
Okay. And then my second question is, since I understand there's now an additional $150 fee if one wants to get a building permit to cover the cost, am I correct in that?
That's the fee for the certificate of appropriateness, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, but that's, yes.
That
but
would be above a building, that's above a building fee, that is comparable.
And that is only occurring because the district would be, the street would be considered.
Certificate of appropriateness is a separate fee, that's correct.
But would only be because of the historic.
If it's within this district, that's
Okay.
correct.
So if the homeowners are opposed to this, would the board be willing to pay for those extra fees if
We have no funds whatsoever. We're volunteers with no budget,
So then where
you'd have to go to the Board of Trustees.
So what is this $150 for?
It covers, I guess, the staff of the planning commission, planning department. and building
But aren't they already employees getting a salary? I'm trying to understand why there's an extra fee.
There's a fee because it's, all certificates of appropriateness get reviewed by various consultants before they come here. They're not all village employees. And there's a fee structure for that, and it's separate from the building department fee.
All right. So in a sense, it sounds like if we become an historical district, we're going to be discriminated against. Because we're now going to have to pay extra fees and go through extra oversight before we do anything for our house. I realize it's not a legal definition of discrimination, but that's the way it feels. Thank you very much for your
I
time.
will say also that in the process, one goes to the planning department and says what the change that's being considered, and if it's considered a minor change that doesn't need a certificate of appropriateness, then none of that applies. Say paint color, as I've said, we don't care about paint color, but something like that, if you went in, the staff there has a list of things that do not require a certificate of appropriateness.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, Wendy Tittle, also 30 Ellis Place. I just also wanted to say that I'm very much opposed to this because of the fact that when we bought into our street, we did not buy into a housing association as in a condo. We're not in an expectation of an association or a layer or paying additional fees for anything or an anticipation of a group decision. We bought as an independent owner, expecting to have rights as an independent owner. And I do say I resent the fact that there is an imposition, and it doesn't seem to be a vote or a question of whether or not we have decided that we want to now become non-independent bodies. So I feel that this is unwarranted, unwanted, and inappropriate economically, socially, and morally. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, I will declare.
Mr. Chairman, what I would ask is that we have a motion to keep the public comments open until the 19th of July.
Okay, as I said, we will take further comments in writing submitted to the planning department, but we need apparently a motion from a member of the commission to that effect. Do I hear such a motion? Okay, Phil Ferranda. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Adam Markovich. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the hearing then is technically still open for the next 10 days for you to submit any further testimony or document. Okay, but the hearing is now closed as far as the agenda of this meeting. Thank you.
Get busy. Thanks for meeting also.
Where is this piece of paper?
Put a sign on my forehead.
On Monday, it's away.
I don't have those who didn't sign it.
I'll do my best.
So I'll be so and tell me.
Best picture and see if they can make out their hands.
Well done.
Okay, I'll give you a call, yeah.
You're welcome.
It's an old day thing when I go. Yeah. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. All right, I'm doing.